Welcome back to Ta-da 3D printing. Today I'll show you how I went from the gigantic footprint of the stock MMU3 to a much more compact design that's also a lot easier to load by placing the spools above and having a different kind of filament bank behind. A subscriber sent a link to this YouTube video that showed this setup for an MMU2, and I decided that it would be a similar setup for an MMU3. So I wanted to try this out also because it's going to be easier to load, but I'm not going to have to worry about spring-loaded retract spool holders and that sort of thing. The original design is on Thingiverse by TN Dave, and most of the parts are printable. There is going to be some hardware required as well. So I downloaded all of the parts and went through and arranged them as he had recommended. Most pieces can all be printed on one build plate at once, so I did run this on my MMU3 to upgrade my MMU3, and as he recommended, I did 20% infill and changed the infill pattern to gyroid. I will have to print 5 of these, and they're a little under 6 hours each. There also is a filament guide that I printed all 5 at once, and the bearing retainer, which he recommends printing at 100% infill. Of course, he was running this on an MK3, so we'll see how it does on an MK4. And then Greg Gaub, that had created the YouTube video, created this file under Mr. Flippant, and this is so that you don't have to cut acrylic for the filament bank. You can also print it. There are several different sizes. I went with the largest size because with my Prusa XL, I will be able to print this size. If not, you can print the smaller size on your MK3 or 4, and the filament will just stick out the top just a little bit, but there is room for that. I was hoping that I would be able to print 3 parts at once on the XL, but after trying to arrange them a little bit, I realized that I'm only going to be able to print 2 parts, so I print the front and the back for each set. This will take about 5 hours for each set as well, and I'm going to be running the Prusa Galaxy Black for all the pieces, and then I also have some Prusa of the recycled in a 2 kilogram. The prints went fine on the MK4, all of these pieces here. I did think about printing on the XL, but I'm still running the 0.6 nozzle, so I was a little nervous that the tolerances wouldn't be the same. So I'm just going to run all of these on the MK4 over and over again. But I am going to, of course, print the filament bank guide. That's that gigantic piece. That's going to be on the XL, and I'm going to be using this 2 kilogram of recycled filament. These pieces also printed really quickly and completely fine in the Galaxy Black, but when I got to the bearing retainer, I had some issues. I printed with and without input shaper, and I kept coming back to pieces just not sticking to the bed and a mess. So I decided to run it on the bamboo, and that finished out okay. Okay, so I've got a big box of multiple things that I've ordered on Amazon for all the parts and pieces. Let me go through them one at a time. So I've got the pan head self-tapping screws. This is an assortment. I did try to get everything in black because I printed everything in the Galaxy Black, so I really wanted to see if I could get all of the hardware black if possible. I've got this. I have 3 sets of the pneumatic push. These are going to attach the tube for the filament on 2 sides. So I needed at least 10. I was feeling like I might need more, so I went ahead and got 3 packages, 3 sets of them. Then I've got a large assortment of, these are flat head screws. The other ones were self-tapping, these are not. So screws, bolts, kit. Okay, and then I needed some more drill bits. This one is a metric set, and this one is a center drill set. So I think I just need 1 from each of those, but I wanted to make sure I had everything. And then the last thing that came in that I was waiting for ever is the ball bearings. So I don't think that if I pulled apart the buffer that these would be the right size. So I did order these as well just to make sure I had everything. I probably went overboard on all of the different things that I purchased, but I didn't want to be held up by not having the exact right size of screw or not having enough of them. So I wanted to be able to just knock this out quickly. Okay, so we have one set ready. There's 5 pieces that I'll print on one build plate, and then the bearing retainer. All of those for one set. The first step is to clean out the filament holes on this piece with a 2mm or number 47 drill. It says careful to keep straight with the printed hole. So it's going to be this and this. You can see through them a little bit, but they're a little bit, there's almost like a little bit of a lip or something in there. So we need to clean that out so the filament can go through there. So with my metric drill bits, I'm looking for the number 2. So I think I'm going to take the smaller drill bit and see if I can clean it out a little bit that way. I know that I am drilling a little bit through, maybe more than it seems like it should, but the filament does need to load all the way through there. So I'm going to grab filament and see if it will load. Okay, that looks good. And this side, yeah. I just want to make sure at this point that it goes through because it's a little harder to drill these holes later. So the next step is to take the roller and add the bearing into it. And it is kind of tight. So I'm just gonna kind of really force it in there. And once I have it kind of jammed smoothly in there, I can just push it the rest of the way so that it's flush on both sides. Okay, and then I'm going to take this and put it into here. Now there are some notches. There's kind of like a, from this side there you'll see just a little bit of like a triangular shape, and then from this side there's actually 2 notches, one here and one here. Let's see. And you want to have both of them slide in between this opening. So this is kind of raised. You can kind of use that as your guide, but you do need to get both sides to slip in. So you can see on this side, both of those are in, and both of those are in on this side. And from this side, you can see that little triangle shape is inside. And of course, we need to make sure that it's slipped in enough that the opening is there. Then we can set the bearing retainer here. And we need an M5 by 12 flathead screw. So in here, I've got M5 by 12 is 3 over. 1, 2, 3. We just need 1. Okay, and you can see from it spinning around that it does spins easily. This needs to move freely, and you may have to just kind of spin it a few times to get it to slide around how it needs. Work its way in there a little bit, but now it's moving freely. We're going to take the filament load guide, which is this one with just kind of the round, and we need to flip it this way and set it on the bearing retainer. Then take both these parts and have this one with the hole facing up. Slide this one on until they overlap, and this does need to move freely. And then these are going to go in the notches here. So we're going to set them, flip it over, make sure we go over the bearing, and that this can move freely. So from the side, if I hold it in place, you can see that this moves forward and backwards with. So now we need to attach these two together with 4 M3x8 flathead screws. Okay, so everything is sitting flush. Everything still moves. I'm gonna have to flip this around a little bit to get it to move freely again, but yeah, it's going good. Now we're going to attach this to the filament bank, and you can either make the acrylic one as he shows, or you can go with the 3D printed one that I did. I did make the largest one. Okay, so we can attach it together, and we need to have the notches up, overlap each other, make sure that the screw holes line up. I did notice that there's 4 openings on the sides and only 3 on the back, so it looks like this one is not going to line up unless maybe we feel like doing the self-tapping screws, but we'll see. So we're going to set these together and they'll overlap. And then we can attach them together using M3x16 screws. Let's see, up these 2. Okay, now this filament bank is a different file, and he just says to use M3 screws to attach these together. I really could probably use the same M3x16 here, but they're just a little bit tight, and this is threaded, this is not, and I don't have self-tapping screws in that size, so I may just do like M3x12 or just something a little bit. The next size down that I have is M3x12. So let me try those and see if they'll catch, but also not be too difficult to do either. I feel like this is going to slip around a little bit, so I may do these other screws a little bit, because this I think I'm just going to be drilling. So for these ones, I'm going to use the self-tapping, and the largest self-tapping ones that I have is M3x6. So we'll see, this is a really thin top piece, so we'll see if I can get those to work. I'll need 4. And then maybe I'll do the 2 there. I'm not really sure why those don't have the holes. But I'll at least secure it all together first. I can use a little there. Just a little more. Okay, so those are attached. I'm still trying to decide if I want to put screws there. This moves freely. This still spins. And so the next thing is going to be adding the tube attachments, tube fittings. So he does talk about chamfering the tube fittings. So I need 2 for now. Okay, so I need to get the smallest drill bit. I have 1 to 5, and so I'm going to grab the number 1. And on this side, the metal side is where we're going to do the chamfer. Make quite a little mess. So this one is the one that's chamfered. Well, let me start with the stock one. This one is the stock. It's flat, and it's kind of a little bit smaller hole. This one is been chamfered. You can see that it's got the little bit of slope in it, and the opening is just a little bit bigger. Makes a mess, but anything to make the filament easier to load and for things to work more smoothly. Also, I would recommend when you're already going through and chamfering these to also use the number 1 drill bit and drill through the whole thing. The reason for that is that the filament goes through fine. I checked it every step of the way that it goes through, but I noticed once the filament is unloaded, so after it's been in the extruder and it's just gotten a little bit almost fatter here and had the stamped end, that does not want to unload. So once you've loaded all the filament through, you want to change the color, and you have 3 different fittings to go through. Not only is it getting caught and difficult, like I could not get it to go through. And it was not just one color of filament. I actually had that happen with multiple colors. So it goes through fine with just regular filament, but once it hits that end, it doesn't want to go through. So before you attach all of these fittings in place, what I would recommend is to take your drill bit and just widen that out just a little bit more inside the fitting. Drill all the way through, and that gives just a little bit more so that this filament can come through without getting caught. And it's a lot easier to do that now. Right now, I have realized that after I've already installed everything, so I'm gonna have to take stuff off the wall and kind of have to clean it up that way. So I would recommend doing that at this step. Okay, so before I add the fittings, I wanna make sure that everything is working correctly. So I'm just gonna run a little bit of filament through it and make sure that everything's doing what it needs to be doing. So let me just feed it in here, make sure it's in the closed position, and yes, that it comes out the other side. I'm not sure which side is which, but I just wanted to make sure that the openings are open enough for the filament. And now that I've got the fittings on, I just want to test them again before I add the tubes to make sure that everything is still good. So I'm going to run it through this side, and it comes out the other side. So that should work. So 1 is done. I need to do 5 total, so 4 more. Okay, now I have all 5 of them ready to go. And I realized that the filament guide, this is the very first part of where the filament goes in. This hangs from the shelf, and the design looks like it was going to go on a wire rack shelf. and I have a solid IKEA shelf, and I'm not planning to drill or anything into it. I was actually planning to just use double stick tape of some sort, either Gorilla or Command strips or something. And with the way that this is notched out, I'm not going to be able to use that. So I need to slice these last little bits off and just reprint them. And that worked out good. These are completely flat now. This was the previous part and the new part. So this will fit, this will sit flush on the shelf. Then I also need to attach another tube fitting onto this. So I have 5 more of these to camphor out. And it looks to me like the hole is a little bit smaller on this side, and then it looks threaded on this side. So let's attempt to put these in this way. Okay. I'll at least just get them attached enough, and I'll tighten them a little bit more later. Okay, this is partway through. I have the spool holders up here, filament guides, and the tubes into the filament banks. I decided to run them all in on the right. I didn't see any information on does it matter which side. So on the left, now I'm going to run all of the tubes to the machine. So now I need to set the machine in place and just run the last little bit of tubes. Okay, so now I've got the filament in place. So the filament runs through the tube into the buffer, around, and into the back of the MMU3. So this is just really taking up, as far as on my desktop, it's taking up the same space as the MK4 before. It is, of course, going quite a bit higher. The other thing that I really liked about this, rather than just saying, okay, let's move the buffer from the side to the back or something like that, I didn't like that you had to push through and then manually grab and make that connection. So this actually will do it for you. So if you have it in the closed position, it will make the loop, and then when you open it, when the buffer kicks that amount back, it's going to just go into here. So it's not going to be trying to push it all back there or have anything tangled that way. Now to load filament, I just need to go in and preload. Let's do the first one. Preload filament 1. And here it's starting to spin. So up here, I just have this one just kind of tucked in here on the end. So I'm just going to start loading it through the tube. And I already have this bank in the closed position, so it's just going to loop through. And it's just going to go from the tube up from the bank into the back of the MMU3, and it's going to catch. Okay, so it's finished. Really the only thing that I have to do is just continually feed this through all the way to the machine, and once it catches, it loads. So it's a lot simpler. I like having everything up above. Of course, this section here I had to kind of separate out because of the way that my metal walls are. That's the only flat spots that I had, but of course you can make that a lot slimmer as well, and having it behind the machine, even if you have another machine here, you can kind of overlap it. So I think this setup will work out really good. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.